A Study in Emerald. 1. The New Friend. Fresh from their stupendous European tour, where they perform before several of the crowned heads of Europe, garnering their plaudits and praise with magnificent dramatic performances combining both comedy and tragedy, the Strand players wish to make it known that they shall be appearing at the Royal Court Theatre, Drury Lane, for a limited engagement in April, at which they will present My Look-alike Brother Tom, The Littlest Violet Seller, and The Great Old Ones Come, this last an historical epic of pageantry and delight, each an entire play in one act. Tickets are available now from the box office. It is the immensity, I believe, the hugeness of things below, the darkness of dreams. But I am wool-gathering, forgive me, I am not a literary man. I had been in need of lodgings. That was how I met him. I wanted someone to share the cost of rooms with me. We were introduced by a mutual acquaintance in the chemical laboratories of St. Bart's. "You have been in Afghanistan, I perceive." That was what he said to me, and my mouth fell open and my eyes opened very wide. "Astonishing," I said. "Not really," said the stranger in the white lab coat, who was to become my friend. "From the way you hold your arm, I see you have been wounded, and in a particular way. You have a deep tan. You also have a military bearing, and there are few enough places in the Empire that a military man can be both tanned and, given the nature of the injury to your shoulder and the traditions of the Afghan cave folk, tortured." Put like that, of course, it was absurdly simple, but then it always was. I had been tanned nut brown, and I had indeed, as he had observed, been tortured. The gods and men of Afghanistan were savages, unwilling to be ruled from Whitehall or from Berlin or even from Moscow, and unprepared to see reason. I had been sent into those hills, attached to the regiment. As long as the fighting remained in the hills and mountains, we fought on an equal footing. When the skirmishes descended into the caves and the darkness, then we found ourselves, as it were, out of our depth and in over our heads. I shall not forget the mirrored surface of the underground lake, nor the thing that emerged from the lake, its eyes opening and closing, and the singing whispers that accompanied it as it rose, wreathing their way about it like the buzzing of flies bigger than worlds. That I survived was a miracle, but survive I did, and I returned to England with my nerves in shreds and tatters. The place that leech-like mouth had touched me was tattooed forever, frog-white, into the skin of my now withered shoulder. I had once been a crack shot. Now I had nothing, save a fear of the world beneath the world, akin to panic, which meant that I would gladly pay 6pence of my army pension for a hansom cab, rather than a penny to travel underground. Still, the fogs and darknesses of London comforted me, took me in. I had lost my first lodgings because I screamed in the night. I had been in Afghanistan. I was there no longer. "I scream in the night," I told him. "I have been told that I snore," he said. "Also, I keep irregular hours, and I often use the mantelpiece for target practice. I will need the sitting room to meet clients. I am selfish, private, and easily bored. Will this be a problem?" I smiled, and I shook my head and extended my hand. We shook on it. The rooms he had found for us in Baker Street were more than adequate for 2 bachelors. I bore in mind all my friend had said about his desire for privacy, and I forbore from asking what it was he did for a living. Still, there was much to pique my curiosity. Visitors would arrive at all hours, and when they did, I would leave the sitting room and repair to my bedroom, pondering what they could have in common with my friend. The pale woman with one eye bone white, the small man who looked like a commercial traveller, the portly dandy in his velvet jacket, and the rest. Some were frequent visitors. Many others came only once, spoke to him and left, looking troubled or looking satisfied. He was a mystery to me. We were partaking of one of our landlady's magnificent breakfasts one morning, when my friend rang the bell to summon that good lady. "There will be a gentleman joining us in about 4 minutes," he said. "We will need another place at table." "Very good," she said. "I'll put more sausages under the grill." My friend returned to perusing his morning paper. I waited for an explanation with growing impatience. Finally, I could stand it no longer. "I don't understand. How could you know that in 4 minutes we would be receiving a visitor? There was no telegram, no message of any kind." He smiled, thinly. "You did not hear the clatter of a brougham several minutes ago. It slowed as it passed us, obviously as the driver identified our door. Then it sped up and went past, up into the Marylebone Road. There's a crush of carriages and taxicabs letting off passengers at the railway station and at the waxworks, and it is in that crush that anyone wishing to alight without being observed will go. The walk from there to here is but 4 minutes." He glanced at his pocket watch, and as he did so, I heard a tread on the stairs outside. "Come in, Lestrade," he called. "The door is ajar, and your sausages are just coming out from under the grill." The man I took to be Lestrade opened the door, then closed it carefully behind him. "I should not," he said, "but truth to tell, I've not had a chance to break my fast this morning, and I could certainly do justice to a few of those sausages." He was the small man I had observed on several occasions previously, whose demeanour was that of a traveller in rubber novelties or patent nostrums. My friend waited until our landlady had left the room before he said, "Obviously, I take it, this is a matter of national importance." "My stars," said Lestrade, and he paled. "Surely the word cannot be out already. Tell me it is not." He began to pile his plate high with sausages, kipper fillets, kedgeree, and toast, but his hands shook a little. "Of course not," said my friend. "I know the squeak of your brougham wheels, though, after all this time, an oscillating G-sharp above high C. And if Inspector Lestrade of Scotland Yard cannot publicly be seen to come into the parlour of London's only consulting detective, yet comes anyway, and without having had his breakfast, then I know that this is not a routine case. Ergo, it involves those above us, and is a matter of national importance." Lestrade dabbed egg yolk from his chin with his napkin. I stared at him. He did not look like my idea of a police inspector, but then my friend looked little enough like my idea of a consulting detective, whatever that might be. "Perhaps we should discuss the matter privately," Lestrade said, glancing at me. My friend began to smile impishly, and his head moved on his shoulders as it did when he was enjoying a private joke. "Nonsense," he said. "Two heads are better than one, and what is said to one of us is said to us both." "If I am intruding," I said gruffly, but he motioned me to silence. Lestrade shrugged. "It's all the same to me," he said, after a moment. "If you solve the case, then I have my job. If you don't, then I have no job. You use your methods, that's what I say. It can't make things any worse." "If there's one thing that a study of history has taught us, it is that things can always get worse," said my friend. "When do we go to Shoreditch?" Lestrade dropped his fork. "This is too bad," he exclaimed. "Here you were making sport of me when you know all about the matter. You should be ashamed." "No one has told me anything of the matter. When a police inspector walks into my room with fresh splashes of mud of that peculiar mustard yellow hue on his boots and trouser legs, I can surely be forgiven for presuming that he has recently walked past the diggings at Hobbs Lane in Shoreditch, which is the only place in London that particular mustard-coloured clay seems to be found." Inspector Lestrade looked embarrassed. "Now you put it like that," he said, "it seems so obvious." My friend pushed his plate away from him. "Of course it does," he said, slightly testily. We rode to the East End in a cab. Inspector Lestrade had walked up to the Marylebone Road to find his brougham and left us alone. "So you are truly a consulting detective," I said. "The only one in London, or perhaps the world," said my friend. "I do not take cases. Instead, I consult. Others bring me their insoluble problems. They describe them, and sometimes I solve them. Then those people who come to you are, in the main, police officers, or are detectives themselves, yes." It was a fine morning, but we were now jolting about the edges of the rookery of St. Giles, that warren of thieves and cutthroats which sits on London like a cancer on the face of a pretty flower seller, and the only light to enter the cab was dim and faint. "Are you sure that you wish me along with you?" In reply, my friend stared at me without blinking. "I have a feeling," he said, "I have a feeling that we were meant to be together, that we have fought the good fight side by side in the past or in the future, I do not know. I am a rational man, but I have learned the value of a good companion, and from the moment I clapped eyes on you, I knew I trusted you as well as I do myself. Yes, I want you with me." I blushed or said something meaningless. For the first time since Afghanistan, I felt that I had worth in the world.